Hi, and welcome everyone. Today's topic today is women's equality at work, and I have an amazing guest today. Her name is Reagan Carey. She is the commissioner of the Premier Hockey Federation. It's Women's Pro Hockey. She also was the general manager of the U.S. national women's team from 2010 to 2018. She's worked for a decade with the NBA and the NHL, and she's also been really active in mentoring girls for both playing as well as for coaching. I cannot think of anyone better to be our guest today to talk about this really important topic of women's equality, not only in sports, but in work. And as it turns out, Reagan also happens to be a wonderful friend of mine. We know each other through the Google Vitality Lab. So welcome, Reagan. It's so good to have you.
Thanks for having me. Great to be able to be here with you and finally enjoy a conversation officially. It's a tremendous amount of work you're doing to make sure we all are more educated on the area of wellness. And just really happy to be here. So thanks for the invite.
And certainly equality is a big piece of being well. It's hard to be well if you're feeling like that you're not being afforded equal opportunities and equal rights. So, and I've been wanting to interview you for a long time, so I'm so happy that you're with us today. So where are you coming from, Reagan? And for the rest of you all of our listeners, if you would go ahead and write in the chat where you're coming from. I am actually outside of Washington, D.C. And how about you, Reagan?
I am in Maine right now, so enjoying a little time by the lake with my family. So I can't complain at all. Great spot.
Awesome. Well, great to have you. And so, as is always the case, for all of our listeners, in addition to sharing where you're coming from, please feel free to share comments as well as questions along the way. Reagan is happy to respond to those questions. And again, with a focus on women's equality in the workplace. So, okay, Reagan, we got to start first with your amazing story here about kind of what led you to where you are today in this really prominent position, but also one, I just think that women's hockey is just, it's exploding, and there's so much that's happening in this sport that many of us may not know about. So tell us about your story about how you got to be where you are today.
Yeah, well, like many people my age, many women that played the sport, there's not a ton of us. It's certainly grown exponentially over the last few decades, but my brother played. So I had the privilege of thinking I was pretty special, getting invited to the street hockey games when I was little, and really they just needed a goalie. So I thought I was really skilled, but it just turns out nobody wants to play goalie when you're in street hockey and little. So that's how it started for me. But I really just love the sport, and my brother continued to play. I continued to play, and we moved around a lot growing up. So I had the opportunity to play in a lot of different markets and see a lot of different approaches to the game and different experiences, being usually the only girl in the system and playing. So it really provided, a lot of great foundation and a lot of experience for me to apply later on in my career.
And one of our listeners here is Crystal, coming from Fargo, North Dakota. And I know that a couple of your players, the Lamoureux twins, also come from North Dakota. And they also had the experience, and they shared about how they had brothers and started out playing with their brothers. And they were treated the same as the boys in the family when it came to playing hockey. So that's interesting. It seems like it's a common experience for a lot of women ice hockey players.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I was probably welcome to the game just because they needed an extra body. I think the Lamoureux twins certainly earned their spot. They were probably beating up on their brothers pretty handily. They're talented individuals and fierce competitors. So that must have been some impressive games on the street or on the pond hockey there in North Dakota.
So let's talk a little bit about kind of what's been happening in this sport. And, I know that there was recently a big announcement around the changes that are happening in the sport on a professional level, but also let's talk a little bit about just some of these stories around women hockey players demanding equality in terms of the opportunities that they're given, and also when it comes to equity and pay.
Yeah, there's so many great things happening, and at a fast pace. Like I always take a little bit of stock of realizing, as we were just talking about, growing up, playing with the boys, and often I would have to just. And my story is very similar to many my age of playing. If you were the only girl, you dressed in the not in the locker room. You were asked to go to the public restroom and put your equipment on. There's a lot of equipment in hockey, so there's a lot of time spent in public restrooms of rinks or around, and also having to fight and earn a spot to be able to play. A lot of people didn't want you to play as a girl playing boys hockey, so it wasn't an easy path for many of us. And to see how much is advanced in the game, and to personally, it was a really special moment to be welcomed into the PHF and be honored to be and serve as their commissioner. To go from somebody that did have that experience growing up and really not always being welcomed in the hockey world, to now see women having a pro league and women getting paid and having salary caps that are around over $1 million, and then to be a commissioner of a pro women's sports league. That's a lot of change in a relatively short amount of time. So it's really exciting, but it doesn't just happen. It doesn't just evolve. From when the women's hockey was first introduced in the Olympics in 1998, that really spurred a lot of energy and enthusiasm for the sport. And we got to see role models and, Cami Granado, and Angela Ruggiero, just these amazing trailblazers that inspired this generation that are doing many great things for the next generation. So it all matters and it's all intertwined. And we're really proud of what we're doing at the pro level as well.
And I'm sure you all can hear the sirens that are happening in the background here. Apologize for that. But I'm fascinated, Reagan, also how there are a lot of leaders from other sports who are also involved with this. And specifically, you were mentioning that Billie Jean King has been playing a role in this whole development of this league.
Yeah, I think when it comes to advancing women's sports, we're all on the same team. And as much as the sports are very different, everybody's experience is different, there's a lot of common ground, there's a lot of camaraderie and a lot of awareness of that. It takes, everybody to be contributing, and to have somebody like Billie Jean King, who's, led the way and created so many opportunities for all of us to be part of this league. And then, there's so many other great leaders that are behind the scenes, working to improve the game and to improve opportunities, and just the athletes themselves, what they contribute by being just exceptional athletes and putting on just a terrific show with their talent on the ice in these games, and the competitive spirit. All of that contributes to just making everything, the entire world, more equal footing. Just knowing that girls and little boys, it's part of my favorite thing, watching little boys cheer on these pro women athletes, as the girls have done all along on the men's side. So it really just makes you recognize that change is happening, and we just got to keep chipping away at it.
That's so heartwarming to hear about little boys now cheering on women as well as girls.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk, August 26th is Women's Equality Day. And so that's what really inspired our conversation this month. And I want to talk about, I think a lot of times we think of, when we're thinking of developing kids, and we think mostly about academics. But as it turns out, getting girls involved with sports can really have lifelong benefits. And in fact, it's one of the most important things that you can do if you want to be a leader in later in life, not just in sports, but in the workplace. So talk with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's just incredibly important, and just the skill sets that you develop as being an athlete, particularly part of a team. Just the life skills that you create in those moments, and just being able to develop over the years as boys and men have decades and decades now, having Title IX really introduced that pathway for girls and women to evolve and to grow their skill sets and their ability to lead and endure and overcome and, meet objectives and stick with it. All those things that you learn from being part of the athletic world is important. And as we see now, just, the percentage, which is up there. I know it's close to the 90% mark or more maybe at this point, but the leaders that are in the business world that are women are predominantly from, an athletic background. They played sports, they, played in high school, played in college, and you can just see the confidence that's built in the awareness of what it takes to, lead and be part of a team. All of that matters.
It's so interesting. I mean, I think back on my experience having been an athlete, certainly not the level that you were, but nonetheless, being part of a team. And I feel like that girls so often are having to navigate this mean girl stuff in schools. But when you're on your team, that mean girl stuff really doesn't exist in most cases. So there's also that piece, talk a little bit about how that socializing is such an important part of that development.
Well, I mean, you don't get to pick your teammates, right? So you're in a locker room and you're going from the start of a season to the end of a season, and you have goals, and you have coaches helping you learn how to recognize the strengths of everybody on the team, and how do you work together, and how do you learn what your teammates need to perform at their best. All of those, that process is just so important to understanding how to work with people, and knowing that some days you're going to have an A game and some days you're not, and how do you contribute no matter what you're bringing to the table that day. Just all those lessons, and to be able to do that within your peer group and with girls and women on your team in college, it's just a special bond that is relatively new in the landscape, particularly in the US. I mean, it hasn't been that long since Title IX, and to see how quickly it's moved the needle for equality is sometimes mind-boggling, but it just shows you how much we can do in a short amount of time if everybody's really focused on, particularly contributing to supporting each other.
So just something for all of us to keep in mind, that if we want to ensure that there's more equality in the workplace when it comes to gender equality, then it's really important for us to focus on really getting girls and supporting girls in sports. And I know that that's something that you've been doing a lot of mentoring girls in terms of both playing, but also coaching. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, I just one great program comes to mind. Just every little thing matters, and there's a great program that I learned about a few years ago, the Sports Bra Project, and just even giving girls access to, it's not considered equipment globally, sports bras. So to be able to even just give girls sports bras so they have the confidence to go out and compete and play and feel comfortable doing that, just that little change in awareness of making sure that that's provided to girls. So there's this great program that's all they do is making sure that girls have that piece of equipment that isn't typically thought of in the traditional way, so that they can get out and play and feel confident as athletes. So that's an important part of it for me. I had the opportunity to be involved in pro sports after graduating college, and making sure that I started programs for girls. Particularly, I was in a non-traditional market for hockey, so being able to start programs where they were exposed and saw female coaches on the ice, and same for boys, seeing female coaches on the ice. It's not just about one gender. It's just getting exposed to that there's a lot of different ways that leadership can look like, and your teammates can look different, and you can still have a lot of fun and a lot of success. So those programs all the way through to USA Hockey, being able to create more pipelines for females to be involved on the coaching front was also important, to make sure that we see more opportunities for us in the sport outside of playing.
And it's interesting because I think a lot of times when we think of this battle for equity, a lot of times we think about it kind of changing hearts and minds, and really changing attitudes, and also building confidence. Like, I see a role model, they look like me, I feel like I can do it too. But some of this just comes down to just flat out organizing and creating some new systems. I mean, one of my favorite examples of that, if you look at orchestras and how they went from less than 10% of the orchestras were women to now over 40%. It was a system that they put in place, which was blind auditions. So talk a little bit about kind of, I know that as commissioner, and also you're being involved as the general manager for the team that won the Olympics, and not only the Olympics, but preceding that, the World Cup in 2018. There was a big battle for gender equity leading up to that. But talk about your role as this general manager and kind of some of the systems that have been built to start to bring around some of that gender equity.
Yeah, I think, making sure it's part. I think it's part of the responsibility. Certainly, I didn't have the opportunity to become, a commissioner of a pro women's sports league because of what I did solely in my career. That's, this is an opportunity that reflects just decades of people's work and decades of, people's sacrifice. And we have to be mindful of that. And it's not just up to female leaders; it's up to everybody to recognize that we all have to contribute to that. And in 2017 at USA Hockey, the national team, they were very brave. They were very committed to not just winning on the ice, but off the ice. And they took a huge stand to make sure that there was some institutional change and awareness to make sure that that next generation, had a smoother path and that could do even more because they were given more opportunities. So, the World Championship is annual, and the opportunity to play on your home ice is very rare. It's, you're traveling the world playing these competitions. To be able to earn an opportunity to be on a national team is very rare. So for those players to know that they had the opportunity to play in front of their, families, fans, and people that have supported them, to put that all on the line, to just stand for something that they felt so that they felt that was so important to them in the next generation was something very special to witness, and something I'm really proud of what those players accomplished in that moment. And it certainly changed the course for, how that program was not just treated, but just, what they can do and what they brought to the table. So, I don't think there was anybody that would argue with it. It just was part of that process and making those changes so that people were more aware of how they could support it more appropriately.
And specifically, what the players did was they said they said we're not going to play in the upcoming World Cup unless we get some higher pay and support than we're getting right now. And my understanding is that there was kind of this standoff, and then at the 11th hour, they were awarded that higher pay. It's one of the biggest wins in equity for women in sports.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they did a tremendous job. And again, they put a lot on the line. They worked their entire lives for these big moments. So, all those early mornings and all those long workouts, all those training sessions, all the parents driving them to the rinks early, all of that is on the line to be able to, reward everybody that's been part of that journey with you and to play for your country. Those are special moments. And for them to put that aside, those personal achievements, to do something that's bigger than themselves, was, again, just a really special moment to see. And it's not surprising. It's a special group of women, and they were dedicated. But to see an entire team do that, that's not easy. There's a lot of individuals in that. See an entire team do that, and then an entire player pool around them that supported them and, didn't take those opportunities to maybe take some spots when they were offered. So, the storyline is deep, and just really an impressive effort to make sure that it was, moving in the right direction for the women's program.
And then to see that these players then came back after they were, they won this battle, then to come back and win not only the World Cup, but then a few months later to come back with the gold from the 2018 Olympics. And one of my favorite moments from Google Vitality Lab was actually when you showed us your Olympic gold medal ring that you had just gotten in the mail.
Yeah,
I can only imagine an incredible moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a special, unique experience. And, to do that on the cusp of also, like you said, I mean, this team had just made major advancements and secured major wins off the ice for the sport and for women's sports in general. And then to go, just a day later, start a tournament, World Championship on home ice with all that pressure now mounting to win that, and then to go on, months later to win an Olympic gold medal, which hadn't happened in 20 years. It's a special group of women, and to be able to be part of that and to witness that, is something I'll cherish for sure. But it doesn't rest there. I think a lot of those big moments are necessary, but there's a lot of little kind of marginal gain type of efforts that happen along the way too, that it requires both of those to make sure that we're consistently moving in the right direction. But yeah, having the platform, they knew that winning gave them a platform to have a louder megaphone, to have a taller soapbox, and to do more positive work. And I think a lot of them would probably say they're just as proud of winning the Wilma Rudolph Courage Award with the Women's Sports Foundation in 2017 as they are with the Olympics. So just an exceptional group.
So let's talk about kind of translating this into the workplace, and kind of what are some lessons learned in terms of the advancements that we've been making in gender equity in sports, and how we can apply that in the workplace, particularly because arguably we still have a long way to go.
Absolutely. I think, one thing I've learned from sports, particularly with the national team, is, really everybody is different, right? You have to really find, what people value. And, the system is set up a bit to be based on kind of the same, what does a male leadership and that whole system look like, and how does that affect the employees? But, when you look at hopefully your the demographics within your companies, hopefully that looks a little bit more diversified than it used to. So, obviously that system needs to change, and you need to hear from that demographic. What do they need to be successful? Just like you ask a team, each player on the team, what do you need to be in your optimal performance zone, day in, day out, and to do that in the office, to make sure that that environment, as leaders, I think that's our job, is to create an environment where everybody can excel, and it's not anything more than that. So we just have to kind of remind ourselves of the simple fact that it's how to give everybody what they need, and often that's certainly feeling valued and getting paid for your work, and being heard. So it really becomes pretty simplified, but it's not easy to do.
Well, it's interesting how it's kind of two sides. I mean, it's really empowering the women who are going into the workforce and giving them that confidence, because arguably the gap that exists between men and women it has been characterized by some as a confidence gap. And so certainly having that experience in sports can really help with that. But it's also really changing perceptions on the other side. So, for example, one issue you were mentioning about being heard. Studies show that men are 3 times more likely to interrupt a woman as compared to a man. And so if you're a woman in the workforce and you're continually getting interrupted or minimized in some way, no matter how much confidence you have, it's hard to overcome that.
There's a burden of, being one of the few females in an office or in a leadership position, because you do have to deal with all that on top of them performing well and representing an entire demographic. There's a lot of pressure and a lot of weight on that. And I think, it does take confidence to remind people you don't need to be interrupted. I do that a lot. I don't think I make a lot of friends that way, but it's important. If you just said something and somebody's repeating it, it doesn't feel very good all day long. And to know that I've had experiences that are quite the opposite. And I, often talk about the board of directors for the Premier Hockey Federation just being an exceptional group. And, it was predominantly men, but they were very supportive, and I think very aware of what that challenge is like for women. And so, having more of that, and it's just being able to kind of look in the mirror and understand that, there's a lot of ways and a lot of paths and a lot of ways to do things. And, making sure you're listening to other perspectives is important. I had a lot of learning to do with our league when we had a very progressive transgender and inclusion policy for our player pool, which I'm very supportive of, but I just didn't have a lot of experience in it. And knowing that I've had to fight and walk this path of inequality for my entire career, and before that in playing in boys sports, but that doesn't mean I'm an expert in that area. It means I have to be just as aware. Now I'm on the other side of somebody that's more privileged than they are. So, it really does require all of us to recognize we all have a lot to learn, and we all need to own that and be part of the solution instead of defending things.
So we have a question here from AJ. What do you need to be in your optimal performance zone?
Well, I need to be wearing blue. that's part of my you'll see that a lot, but yeah, there's a lot of things. Everybody's a little different. I think for me, having a transparent group and being able to speak honestly, and like we were just talking about, being able to have an environment where everybody can bring and contribute and listen, and that's important to me. And it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like we're having a productive team. But yeah, the right amount of coffee, not too much, not too little, a little blue, and some great teammates, and we're off to the races on the optimal performance zone.
It's interesting because I think we laugh about those kinds of rituals. We've got Janice saying here, this is so cool. I played university women's hockey in Canada, then went on to coach. Best sport ever. Love that.
Agreed.
I think a lot of times
I'll give a nod to Canada. I have to work with a lot of Canadians, and luckily in this pro league, finally we're on the same team instead of a U.S. Canadian battle. So yeah, nod to the Canadian teammates there.
So that's part of the merger, is bringing together the U.S. and the Canadian leagues together.
Yeah, I mean, it's a global league, so really we're looking for the best in the world to show up and be part of this next phase for women's hockey. And as I see it and said at the beginning, I think this is going to be the most significant event and development for our sport since 1998, when it became an Olympic sport. This is going to be a highly competitive league and really showcase the best in the world on and off the ice. So yeah, it's going to be terrific to see get launched here in January.
Well, it's interesting to see, it seems like that there's kind of, women's soccer has been getting more and more attention. We just had the World Cup, and I'm excited to see how women's hockey starts to become equally popular, if not more so. So, Reagan, share with us, if you would, what are your top 3 takeaways for our listeners here around this topic of women's equality, both in sports, but and how that applies to women's equality in the workplace?
Yeah, I think, just recognizing, again, like we talked about earlier, the marginal gains in those big moments. You don't have to have these big, incredible, powerful moments. You have to have them, but you don't have to, that's not the only way to affect change, and to know that you can do that within just even your own meetings and your own workplace, to be able to, kind of make these smaller 1% gains along the way that will make a difference. Putting that all together really creates the movement, not just one in and of itself. So just knowing that everybody can play a part. I always talk about owning it, just as I was talking about, we don't, a lot of people get caught up in defending why maybe the office and workplace isn't where it should be, or talking about whose fault it is. It really doesn't matter. We just got to we have to own it. We're all part of, making it better. So just, recognizing it and feeling comfortable and saying, well, yeah, we can do this better. And maybe we haven't been doing it well. I think owning it is an essential part, and it translates into, what elite athletes do really well, is just recognizing, areas that they can improve and getting to work on making that better. I think I was going to say a different one, but I will probably lean on in our conversation a little bit more about confidence, and just recognizing that you do belong there. Just because you don't look like everybody else in the room, or maybe don't have the same experience. To me, I was lucky to have a lot of great mentors, and even my parents just reinforcing constantly that makes you, added value more than somebody that doesn't have something to say. So making sure that, it doesn't always feel comfortable, but you belong there and you've earned it, and you have just as much to contribute as anybody else. So, the more you do that, you're going to, really inspire others to do the same. So it's important.
I love that idea of you belong there. And I feel like that's a more inclusive way to battle against imposter syndrome, because I feel like imposter syndrome, I feel like I'm an imposter, and but I have to kind of overcome that by myself. But instead, you belong there. Feels like you're more kind of part of it, that really echoes that team spirit.
Yeah, and I think that, sometimes that reward doesn't come instantly. There's a lot of second guessing and a lot of feeling like maybe, am I doing the right thing? But I think if you, talk to a lot of people that have been in that setting for, a number of years, number of decades, I think, they know that they have made a difference and they are valued. And so, just having that long-term perspective on continuing to show up, continuing to bring your best, and that's really all you can control. We talk a lot about controlling the controllables in elite sports, and that's really all you can do. So everybody belongs, and you have something to say and contribute. So just believe in yourself.
And also celebrate those marginal wins along the way, those small wins, because they really do add up. These are all great things to keep in mind that work both for sports as well as for the workplace. So Reagan, tell us how we can stay in touch with you, how we can follow your great work.
Yeah, I mean, predominantly on LinkedIn, and I think that's the best place. It's where I love watching a lot of your content, and I know we share some exchanges of texts and getting motivated and inspired by the work that you're doing. So that's the best way to keep tabs on what I'm doing as well.
Well, Reagan, it is so great to have you as a guest, and I know that our listeners really enjoyed hearing you, and also it'll be great to share this recording. This will be recorded, so others will get to hear this as well, but all such good lessons that we can apply in any kind of environment, both in our communities, in sports, as well as in the workplace. Coming up in September, the beginning of September, we're going to be launching a Born to Move Told to Sit challenge. So I will be providing tips on how you can overcome this culture of being told to sit and move anyway, because when we move, as Reagan can certainly attest to, not only do we get healthier, but we get happier and we even get smarter. And it's one of the best ways that you can become a great leader in life is by being physically active, whether it's on a team or off the team. I have to say, Reagan, one of my favorite, a couple of favorite lines of mine that you've shared. One is this idea of winning on and off the ice. And also the idea that no matter what sport we're playing, or even if we're not playing a sport, we're all on the same team together. Some really great advice on not only around how we can achieve more equality, but also just how we can live a better life.
Yeah, this is a team sport, I think, across the board. It's going to take a lot of people to help you get to whatever you're trying to do, and having teammates along that journey, always makes it more fun. But also, you can do so much more, and they can lift you up. So, definitely, whatever the challenges or environment, get some teammates and get to work. And I think there'll be a lot of success ahead.
So our next LinkedIn Live will be on September 27th. And until then, everyone have a great month and a half. And Reagan, thank you again for being our amazing guest today. And I know that this was equally inspiring for all of our listeners as it was for me. So until then, see you all in a month and a half. And Reagan, again, thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it.